You're very welcome back. And this video, I'm going to talk about the psychology of consistency in relation to shooting. So I'll talk to you about a thing called skinny tens, we call them. So in my sport, it's precision rifle shooting. I'm an SH2 Paralympic rifle shooter. Um, our bullseye in air rifle is 0.5 mm in size. So sometimes you'll see on the videos of the competitions a big black circle, and that's not the bullseye. The bullseye is actually in the center of that, and it's 0.5 mm in size, and it's white, not black. And if that wasn't enough already, that 0.5 mm of a bullseye is divided into 10 concentric circles. From the outside, it's 10.0, and at the very center circle, it would be 10.9. So 10.9 is the highest score we can achieve with a shot. The reality of the level I'm looking to shoot at is I have to be shooting 10.5 to 10.9 to actually qualify and potentially win. Anything below that, and I'm not even going to be considered for a final. A skinny 10 is what I call it's a flyer. It's so far off of it's hard to think about it really. If it's 0.5 of a millimeter, the full width of the bullseye in diameter. So to be that accurate, that you get upset over the difference between a 10.5 and a 10.0, which is the outer ring, which is what? It's 0.01, 0.02, 3, 4, 5. So 0.05 of a 0.05 of 0.5 mm is what we're talking about. I have to be shooting in the 10.5s above, and a 10, a skinny 10, it's of no use to me. Why does that matter? Well, consistency isn't discipline for its own sake. It's actually an analysis tool and a measurement tool. So if I'm shooting 10.5s, for example, 10.5, 10.6, 10.5, and then I get a 10.0, I have to be able to figure out what is it that happened that brought that shot to a 10.0. If I don't have a consistent approach to doing what I'm doing, how do I even measure whether or not it should be a 10.0? That in effect is the reality. So the consistency allows you I carry out a certain process in a certain way every time, and the number is correct. And when it's not, I have to go, so why isn't it? If you're going to introduce variables into the whole system, how do you even trust the output? Similar to coding, by the way. If you have constants, the same variable value goes into the process every time and comes out the bottom end with the same result. If you're going to allow variables into that process, now you can't trust what's coming out. So again, I want to reframe. Consistency is a diagnostic tool. I won't call it a virtue. Someone who said, oh God, that guy's very consistent, nearly like, isn't he great for being consistent? Well, there's a reason why I'm consistent, because I can't expect to measure the output. I was going to say consistently. I can't rely on the output to be true if I'm going to allow variances in there. If you don't allow for consistent input, how do you even measure improvement? So if I'm carrying out, say there's 15 steps in my process, there's not, let's say there is. If I don't carry out each one of those steps consistently, how do I know I'm getting a better shot, or am I just equally, I've gone low on a shot, for example, a 10.0, I suddenly got a 10.9. Should I be excited? Well, for me, not if I actually haven't warranted it, and I will know. You cannot, how will I put this? If you don't have consistency, how do you say you're not just lucky then? You know, there's not much skill involved in being lucky. And by the way, we all need a bit of luck from time to time. But you can't have it in our competition, 60 shots for a qualifying competition. I can tell you, you will not be able to consistently be lucky for 60 shots. No, it's not. Luck doesn't last that long. I would say in a business parallels I've worked in, you get 10 people with 10 different methods. The same number means nothing. The output, you know. You'll have people, this would be a thing, a little bugbear of mine is, it's 40 hours a week, and I've never been a believer in 40 hours a week, because if that's the metric, then you've got people who work their asses off in that 40 hours and achieve X, and you have guys who are, I'll call them slackers, for want of a better word, and that'll upset some and it'll make some smile. I'm not here to do either, it's just what I call it. The one who's doing very little and just coasting, they're doing 40 hours too. So effort for me is not a metric. It's not. At the level I'm at, I'm expected to show up every day. Anything less than that, and I should be ashamed of myself. It's an insult to the sport. It's an insult to the coaches. Um, so the minimum you're bringing is 100% effort. Consistency has to exist before efficiency can really be judged. You really you couldn't, in our sport, you just could not try 60 different shots with 60 different approaches and say I'm getting better. Even the number, and this is a very important one, I've said it in previous videos. So if I apply the same philosophy that the clock is broken twice a day and yet it's still right twice, the clock is broken and yet it's correct twice a day. Similarly, if I take a shot and I get a 10.9, if it didn't warrant a 10.9, I don't start suddenly going, wow, now I'm in the zone, because you're not in the zone. You're actually, you similarly to getting a bad shot, you just got a good shot. And the good shots can be actually more detrimental to you, because most people want to believe they suddenly struck on something with no validation. And now they do the same thing again and wonder why that didn't work. And it's because it wasn't the result. The good shot wasn't the result of a good, consistent approach, no more than the bad shot was the result of a good, consistent approach. Consistency produces consistency. That might sound odd, but it's very real. If you're not consistent, don't expect to be reliable, and don't bother measuring the output. You know, um, a set of numbers that weren't warranted. I wouldn't like to stand behind them. I wouldn't even feel proud of them. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, that 2 o'clock in the morning thing I talk about, where there's only you, you'll know you're BSing yourself. You'll know you'll BS everyone else. You won't BS yourself. You just go, that wasn't exactly what should have come out of that. I'd say consistency is the precondition for measurement, and it's not option. If you're going to measure certain things, make sure that the process you have is consistent. Similarly to writing code, by the way. You're expecting certain output from introducing certain variable values. It runs through the process and you predefine what the output should be. If it didn't meet it, then you go back in and check what was it in the process that didn't show up in the numbers. Very similarly, my system is very similar to a code run, a while do loop. Anyone who's in the programming area know what I'm talking about. While do, while I'm still within 60 shots, do, and then increment the counter. We have a counter to know when we're finished. Anyway, enough about the coding. I'd say remove variables and introduce constants, hard-coded constants within your system, within the process. Not optional, not we'll try it this way today, we'll try it that way today, unless, and I would say unless you're actually happy with just whatever the outcome is. Never change the process within the process. That's one thing. When I'm executing a shot, the only thing that can happen in there is I will break out. We'll call it a breakout. So if I'm executing my process and at some stage I go, there's something else happening here. This is odd. I haven't seen this before. An example that most shooters would know is you look down the sights and it's not where it should be. Or you look down the sights and it's sitting right on the bull, but you didn't do anything to bring it on the bull. Some people will lean into that as well. It's a false positive if you want. I'm looking down the bull, therefore I must be perfectly on. Not if you didn't align properly. Now you're just on the bull, and equally you could be pointing up into the skocks. So I mean, I'm a big believer in you never break the process or change the process within the process. So what I do is if I look down there and I see something or I experience something or I feel something that's not right, I break, which means I stop and step back out to the beginning and go back in again. Other than that, I execute the process the whole way to the very end, and then at the end I sit back and go, was that the output I expected? And if it's within constraints, So to say I'm looking for a 10.9, uh, the process that I deliver is at a 10.9 level. The output will be less slightly, or it could be 10.9. But if I got a 10.0, I'll know that it was very far off because that's not my normal shot. I'll verify it, I'll review the process, I will make a change, and then I will re-enter the process. But I never change the process while I'm in the middle of it. Otherwise, how do I measure the output? An unexplained good result is the worst thing you'll get. You know, if I know, for example, that I've entered into the process, and this is possibly one of the things I'm quite good at is quality control. If I look in there, so when my head goes onto the cheek piece, there are numerous steps it took to get me there. I didn't just drop my head onto the cheek piece. If I put it down there and suddenly I'm on the bull and I didn't do anything to warrant it being on the bull, I'm smart enough to go break and get back out, because the reality is I could I could get that and think I'm I'm on the perfect line. Why? Because it's giving me back feedback telling me this is perfect, but I didn't do anything to warrant that perfection. And then once I take the shot, it'll go off somewhere else. Or I didn't even bother sighting properly and suddenly I'm at a 10.9. That would be a frightening one as well. So yeah, the consistency allows me to analyze the data, the output in a true light of day, as it were. Um, the skinny tens, you know, if it's gone out from a 10.5 land to I would, for example, if I'm working at a 10.5 level, I'll accept 10.4 and 10.6. 10.8 I won't accept because it wasn't warranted. Equally, 10.2 I won't accept because it wasn't warranted. I'll figure out what it was in the process that allowed that to drift. I'll correct it. That's it. Um, I believe you introduce you create a um, constant process that's reliable. An example I would have had previously. This is something that's very simple, by the way. Most people will be able to do it. You have 100 PCs to install. They've got to connect to 3 different servers to actually configure them correctly for, we'll call it, for a customer service representative to do their job, right? So you could go PC by PC and manually configure them, or you could actually create a script that allowed the system to automate download, and you only have to go to the system to interact to input certain relevant details for your LAN card or whatever, or for a server name or whatever, and then it does the automation. Systems like that, they either work. The beauty of a computer is it works or it doesn't. Computers, particularly unless you introduce something into them, they're reliable as hell. And I bring that sort of mindset into shooting, by the way. I actually think IT people should be quite good at shooting. You just remove the emotion, bring in the logic. You create processes and you execute them. You measure the output. It's very logical for me. For me, if you don't like logic, maybe you need a different approach. Um, I'm always a believer in, before I lean on the result and go away, we won, I actually go, oh, what was the process behind that? Because winning, yeah, if you win at the price of not understanding what it is that it took to win, how do you reproduce it? That would probably be my thing. I prefer to actually be consistently, even if it's at a low level, by the way, because it allows me to improve from there. If I'm up and down and up and down and up and down, that shows me the process is not working at all. I should either be always down, always in the middle, or always up in terms of results, with micro changes, not polar opposites now. The same sequence I introduce into or that I execute in my shooting. That's I train that probably 1,000 times a week. I don't improvise, and I'm definitely not looking to hope that things improve. Control the controllable, as a friend of mine once said. Um, yeah, I'm a believer in fixing the process, executing the process, analyzing the output based on the process. That allows me to get better incrementally. I would say if you're not going to be consistent, or if you're not going to rely on consistency, don't expect reliable, measurable output. The reliability, by the way, is the key there. You can measure any output. It cannot be reliable. It just cannot. And motivation doesn't have any room in my process anyway, so it's not something that affects me. Um, I would say too, by the way, if you find consistency boring, maybe that's why you're not achieving. Consistency isn't exciting, but you can bank on it. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to work. And I think maybe that's a thing as well, is in something like shooting and potentially other sports. I don't analyze other sports. I can see similarities in some. Um, it's not meant to be exciting. And if you don't like the granularity, if you don't like the detail, because the wins are brought from, I believe, are brought from detail. And if you're not going to work at that, and you're not going to accept that, and you're not going to rely on it, the consistency, it's not exciting. It allows it to be measurable and improvable, though. That's fierce important. Yeah, so thanks for dropping by.